For hundreds of years, people have reported seeing large featherless flying creatures that resemble pterosaurs, gigantic flying reptiles thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago. Scientists dispute their existence in the modern world, but the evidence says otherwise. Whether you believe they exist or not, people still continue to see these creatures well into the present day. Overall, there are more than 350 documented reports in almost every continent of the world. And researchers like Jonathan Wickham, Jacob Guerra, and myself have been taking these reports into consideration with an open mind to figure out just what might be lurking in the skies above us. This true story is told by Canadian pterosaur eyewitness Jim Evans, recounting his encounter with two living pterosaurs in northern Saskatchewan in the summer of 1979. It is entitled The Day Time Stood Still. The encounter was reported to pterosaur sighting investigator Jonathan Whitcomb. I will now quote the words of the eyewitness. This amazing story deserves to be told. Growing up in an isolated Aboriginal community in northern Saskatchewan, I was always happy to be outdoors hiking and exploring. I usually spent hours a day hiking alone for miles, exploring new small lakes, ponds, muskeg fields, and always an abundance of animal watching and trekking. My time in the north allowed me to be employed and trained as a heavy equipment operator for road construction to a uranium mine and then an operator of semi-trucks. I hauled fuel, tree posts, concrete containers, steel, uranium, and hazardous materials throughout Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, and up to Uranium City across the frozen lakes. During this one particular time transporting fuel to a uranium mine in northern Saskatchewan at the age of 19, I had a layover in the community where I grew up during a hot summer night. The next day it came to be that the semi-tanker truck was no longer operational and I had to find my way back to my home until this was resolved, which could be days. Back then, this was difficult as being in isolation, one needs to travel hours on winter roads before coming upon any type of community. Some winter roads were not accessible during the summer, only a visible cut line and a means to a walk and hike. I was given a ride up to one of these cut lines that went directly to my now hometown, which was an approximately 50 kilometers hiking due west from that gravel road. I was in for a very long walk in unknown wilderness as I have never walked this cut line before. The morning was hot and sunny. I had walked about an hour down the wide cut line, which was about 60 to 80 feet tree line to tree line wide, from what I can recall. Lots of rocks and waist-high grassy meadows filled down the cut line. I had a strange feeling that something large was in the area, so I grabbed a large walking stick from the trail. I started walking a bit slower and stopped from time to time to listen carefully for sounds. About another 5 minutes I came upon some large rocks, stood on the highest, and then froze. Just directly in front of me, about 250 or 300 feet down the cut line, looked to be a large black bear walking on all fours, which seemed to be slowly bouncing up and down, sort of floating, seeing about half of its body out from the grassy meadow. I thought to myself, this was very strange. It did not seem to move in the way a bear would walk or move. It appeared to almost float walk as if it was on the moon. I watched it as it sort of used this strange bouncing, floating walking motion for a few more minutes, which seemed like an hour. I stayed frozen on the rocks, thinking if it got any closer I would start screaming and smashing the stick against the rocks to scare it away. I really still could not make out if it was actually a bear. Then all of a sudden the big black bear object bounced and split into two large strange-looking creatures of the same size. My mind raced to figure out what I was actually looking at. I could not place this animal with anything I knew of. I just stared in shock watching the two creatures getting closer. Maybe about 200 feet now I saw head movement. I really could not believe what I was seeing. As the one creature behind the first moved its head and turned to its right, I saw something that looked prehistoric. Very large-headed beak pointed downward, long in the front, and the back was extended about half the length as the front. It looked as if it had very dark short hair or fur on the top and back portion, but the long beak-type bill seemed a bit bony and dark, the same color as the rest of it. The bear would have had me a bit scared, but now these things had me wondering if I'm really going to be a meal. I was terrified. Not knowing what these things were, I decided to be very still and quietly crouching to watch them get closer. I could now hear faint low-frequency clicking sounds, kind of echoing off through the trees in all directions. It seemed to surround me. Trying to determine what these things were on the ground with these elongated heads had me thinking it's best not to mess with these things. They were now about 175 feet from me now, still moving with this bouncing floating kind of nature, staying very close together. I then decided to make myself present and get a real good look at them. Brave or stupid, I was young. I stand straight up, and just as I see in view what the heads actually looked like, yes, a prehistoric bird ran into my head. But why are they bouncing around on the ground? Can't be any bird I've ever seen. Just as they notice I'm there in front of them, about 150 feet in front of me, they both spread these enormous bat-looking wings. The span of both had to be between 16 and 18 feet, could possibly be much more. They were now close enough that I could see that they did not have feathers, but very short fur or very dark, closely knitted hair. It seemed to be even and consistent across its body and bat-type wings. Watching them spread their wings, I saw that they were off the ground immediately, no flapping. They just opened their wings, which put them about 10 or 15 feet in the air, and at this point gliding slowly right towards me. I could see now that these small claw-type hooks, which were clenched and possibly two or three of them at what seemed to be at a single joint in the middle of each wing. What I then noticed was this long tail. It almost threw me off. It looked like a crane would with its long legs stretched out behind them while in flight, but I knew this had to be some sort of tail as I saw two short and thick stubby legs with large clenched claws attached to the base of this bird's back end, which looked again almost like a bat. Just before they moved their wings again, I hear this ear-piercing screaming screech, low-pitched, that just seemed to echo across the treed area for about a mile all around me. It was so loud and chilling that it made my jaw drop and hair rise on my neck and arms, running down my spine. They then just slightly moved their wings, and within a split second, they seemed to be going straight up, directly in front of me. They had to be 150 feet before another second passes, and then they were completely out of sight by the 2 or 3 second mark. I'd never seen them flap their wings again as they disappeared out of sight. This could not register as to how this was possible, even to this day as this vision keeps coming back into my mind. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to read the original report of this sighting, or the Google Maps coordinates of the exact location the sighting took place, the links to those are in the description. If you have seen a pterosaur yourself, or know someone who has, you can share your encounter on my website, which you can also find in the description box below. Stay tuned for more cryptozoology videos coming soon on this channel, and always remember that the first step to discovery is observation.